Hi, welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. In honor of Fan Expo coming to Toronto this week, my guest is Sam Maggs, author of The Fangirl's Guide to the Galaxy and the upcoming Wonder Women, 25 Innovators, Inventors, and Trailblazers Who Changed History, out October 18th from Quirk Books. She's also written for the Mary Sue and been a regular presence on screens across Canada as the host of Cineplex's pre-show package, so yeah, she's a film person. Perhaps inevitably, Sam picked Serenity, Joss Whedon's 2005 big screen edition of his beloved 2002 television series Firefly, which reunited the entire cast of the show, including Nathan Fillion, Gina Torres, Alan Tudyk, and Morena Baccarin, for a feature-length adventure designed to give fans closure and flip off the morons at Fox who canceled Whedon's delightful space western after just 14 episodes. If you're not familiar with the show or the film, we do get into spoiler territory, so maybe go catch up and join us when you can. What a goddamn great story that was. This is Someone Else's Movie.
Well, this is always my favorite movie of all time, which I know is like the hardest question ever, and everyone always asks me that, and I feel so anxious answering, but for sure this is my favorite movie of all time. I watch it at least twice a year. Like, I just love it. I'm a hardcore, like, Joss Whedon apologist. Forever, so, you know, I was a big fan of the film when it came out, and I think there's a little bit of nostalgia for me there with, like, oh, I went and saw it in theaters, and it was, like, this little, like, fan-made thing, and, like, a bunch of fans made it happen, and so that has, like, a special place in my heart. But beyond that, I also think it's just, like, a perfect film. Like, it has everything, and I can watch it endlessly and never get tired of it, and that, for me, is, like, the mark of a perfect movie.
Okay, how often do you watch Firefly? Because it feeds in at least as...
Firefly maybe once every couple of years when the mood strikes me. I mean, admittedly, that's a slightly longer commitment than, like, 1-2-hour movies, so it's a little bit easier to rewatch this. But, like, Firefly is great and everything, but I think that the movie is actually better than the show, which is a rare circumstance, I think, when you're talking about, like, shows to movies or books to movies. But
yeah, you don't find that often. You don't find that sort of... I just watched it again last night after not seeing it for a few years, and it feels to me, it does. It feels like the sort of the purest expression of the show.
That's exactly what it is. I think, like, finally he had money. I mean, like, not a lot of money, but the money to do with it what he maybe would have wanted to do with the show, with, like, flying hover cars and, like, all that stuff, like, bigger sets, not just one cargo bay set and all that stuff. So you could really see, like, where he was going with the show, like you say, in a more, like, pure way. And I think that's really cool, because for people who are fans of the show, you can see, like, that original vision. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
It's also a little darker. Like, I think perhaps network television was not really like, you can go online and read a bunch of, like, the excise stories that didn't make it onto the show, and they were all pretty dark. Like, the original direction for the show was not as wacky as it ended up being, and that's a lot more in this, and that's when I think Joss Whedon is best, is when it's dark and introspective and small. Like, I think The Avengers is great and everything, but, you know, if Ultron had been what Joss originally wanted it to be, in, like, a dark, introspective little film, I think it would have been as good as this. Yeah. That's where he sort of excels, in my opinion.
No,
I don't know anything.
I'm inclined to agree. And actually, what really surprised me watching Serenity again after the two Avengers movies is watching his group dynamic stuff.
Yeah.
And how, like, it's fully formed, obviously, because he'd been doing it on Buffy and Angel and everything else. But he stages stuff very, very differently in Serenity. Partially, I think it's the limitation of the budget.
Sure.
You know, build one big set and keep moving through it.
Yeah. But like that, the opening scene in Serenity is all, like, one long shot for, like, 12 minutes? And it, like blows my mind. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, and it gives you, like, if you're new to the show, which I guess is possible.
Yeah.
Because inevitably a movie will have potentially a larger audience, especially internationally.
Yeah.
So you have to, I mean, that's the thing that always fascinates me about these movies. And it works for his Marvel films as well. You have to really quickly set up the stakes and the characters for the audience that doesn't know them, but you can't pander to the audience that does.
And a lot of people, like, get into the show by watching the movie, I think, as well.
So you're backfilling in a weird way.
You are, yeah. So, but, like, I think you're right. Those first 12 minutes, that long tracking shot, like, introduces every character, sets up all of their personalities, and, like, establishes the ship as a character as well. And that, like, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Joss, like you say, is the master of the ensemble cast, though.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he does best, for sure.
It's sort of delightful. And also, he loves that weird structural thing where he'll open with a deep flashback. He did that on Buffy about 17 times.
Yeah, I think that's true. And, like, pulls out. Yeah.
300 years ago, the Watchers Council did this, and now it's a piece of dirt that Giles is stepping on.
Exactly.
Just completely dismissive.
But it's good every time.
Yeah, and
I fall for it every time.
Yeah, and in Serenity, it's the amazing wish fulfillment of, well, yeah, how did this whole thing start? And it plants the seed for what I assume would have been, had the show kept going, there would have been a more a slower reveal of all the elements that form the reasons that the Alliance is coming after River and Simon. But yeah, it was. I remember seeing that in the theater at the preview screening the Wednesday night before it opened.
Yeah.
Were you there by any chance?
Oh gosh, no. I was in the 12th grade when this movie came out, and my parents took me out of school that afternoon to go see it because I had it in my day planner for months, and so we went in the afternoon and saw a matinee, and my dad had never sworn in front of me before in my life, and when I don't know, is it too late to spoil? When major character dies, he loudly swore in the movie theater, and I was like, oh my god, that's how you knew it was real.
So he was a fan of the show too.
Yeah, my whole family,
so
for
the
sure.
investment was there.
Interestingly, my mom and I were fans of the show when it originally aired on Fox, but they aired it all out of order.
I know.
So it didn't really make any sense, and my dad couldn't get into it, and it wasn't until we got the DVDs that he was like, oh, this is actually a really good show, but they really messed with it, as we all know.
Yeah, it's just to the point where when we heard that Fox was commissioning a new Whedon series, we were simultaneously excited and sad, and then with Dollhouse it's getting I know you trust them, but don't, they're gonna hurt you.
Why would you do this? I know. Yeah, and I think this was supposed to be the second season, so I think you're right, all this would have been long and drawn out and deeper and stuff, but I don't know. It gave us such a great movie that it doesn't. I don't regret it, and I'm not one of those people who keeps being bring it back, because this is such a perfect encapsulation of what this should be that I'm good with it. Yeah. Let's just leave it as it is.
Well, I felt that way about the second season of Dollhouse when it became really clear that it wasn't. They canceled it, but they were going to let him finish. So 13 episodes to do 5 years of television. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just this incredible, high-speed, invigorating...
Stuff happens all the time. Yeah, totally.
And now other shows are doing that.
Yeah.
Blind Spot just burned through, I think, 4 possible years of plot development in the first...
Oh, that's really interesting.
8 or 9 episodes. They've just, they introduced this one antagonist and then immediately killed him, and then another one and then killed him, and it's just let's keep moving.
Yeah.
You may not have 10 years. You might only have a season or two, but at least show people that you could take the story places.
Yeah, that's really true.
So Whedon does it because he's determined to tell his story, arc or no arc, and the result is now that he's inspired it. I'm so frustrated with the way that Whedon is treated by television because he's so clearly good at it.
I know. It's really terrible.
Yeah.
It's such a shame because, that being said, Buffy did, 10 years? 7 years? 7 years.
7 of Buffy,
5 of Angel. That's respectable.
Mm-hmm.
That's not bad. We all wish Firefly had gone longer, and Dollhouse was obviously, very poorly treated and everything, but, I do hope he decides to go back to TV now, because I thought he did really great things with the Inventors. I know he has a comic book coming out, but he should go back to television.
I think it'll be Netflix or Hulu. I think there'll be a season commitment somewhere.
That's smart.
Somewhere where they'll just say, here's money, go away.
Yeah.
Do whatever it is you do.
That's what they would be smart to do, because that's when he is just wacky and all out there, and But this movie, I don't know, man. The shot where River is standing with the weapons and the doors open at the end and the blood is dripping off the axes, that's who I aspire to be every day. It's that image. If I could just be that, then that would be great.
The room did go crazy.
Yeah.
I saw that I think it was the Varsity 8, the big room, and people went just bananas for that.
That's amazing.
I suspect it was fans and not fans alike, because it must have been in that room. There was, radio contest winners, people who didn't necessarily know what Serenity was.
Sure.
Or Firefly, and it worked. It worked on them. And I love cool. I love the casual touches of confidence that, it doesn't matter if you've never seen this before, they're going to speak Chinese sometimes and we're not going to subtitle it. It's just what happens.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a lot of confidence in his world building. in this series, I think. And, you know, lots of people have commented on the problems with the series and with the world, and, like, I don't necessarily disagree with any of that. Like, you can totally have your problems with it. I just think that it was so original and ballsy, especially for its time.
Yeah, sorry, the dog is organizing himself.
But he's so cute, so it doesn't even matter. There we go. Yay.
Just, why is this a thing? Why does this have to be a thing?
But it was so, like, original and different. No one was doing that kind of, like, high sci-fi then. And even now, like, we're only starting to see shows go back more in that direction. Like, The Expanse and things like Childhood's End that just came out, and which I really appreciate. But there was a real dearth of that for a while in both theaters and on TV.
Yeah.
So this was so refreshing.
Science fiction is always a hard sell. And
totally.
I don't even know that Firefly, but just by being a space western, it gets around that.
Yeah.
But the practicality of it, and how there's no sound in space, and how the thing that I got watching it this time around, watching Serenity anyway, is just how many wounds are sustained. People get, like, shot and necks are broken.
At the end, Nathan Fillion has, like, the bloody eye. Yeah. That always stands out to me. No, it's true. Like, they're actual people. And
the idea that future science will be able, like, it's not that big a deal to snap someone's neck anymore. In this situation.
It's kind of messed up, and I like what you said about the no sound in space stuff too, because that's something that always irritates me, to the point that they took, like, the big space battle that takes place in Serenity, like, purposely takes place in the atmosphere of a planet so that they could have sound, and I was just like, yes, thank you. And they were the first people, like, Battlestar Galactica used the digital team from Firefly, because the, like, signature look of Battlestar is that, like, handheld space
the snap zooms, I think they call them.
Yeah, but Firefly did it first, and Serenity did it first, which I think is really cool, and it, like, works so well for the, like you say, like, the gritty, realistic space western, and I appreciate those little touches, because it makes it easier for you to immerse yourself in it.
Well, yeah,
and also nerds are, like, very, like, picky about that shit, you know?
Yeah,
like,
you want it to be real. You want it to be as real as possible, even though, you know, again, it's like, it's possible to watch Star Wars and now think, oh, well, if they had email, you know, the plots of Empire and stuff, like, none of this would matter. You could just fax a picture of someone to somebody, but those things didn't exist when they made the movies. Yeah. And so you just have to keep moving. Like, you have to situate yourself in that reality. And with Firefly, Firefly extrapolates a great deal, but in Serenity, there's that moment early on where Mal is watching a video on what looks like an iPad, and for a second I thought, oh, right, and then I realized, no, they made this movie before those came out. This is pre-tablet. Yeah. They're just good at futurism.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of my favorite things about the world in which this film is situated too, that by making it like a space western, it takes away that, oh, well, everything would be all shiny and they would have a million different gadgets, and, like, well, it's like, no, these are a bunch of, like, crappy moons where there's nothing but a horse. So, like, obviously they can't cure your cancer, or, like, they can't, etc., etc. And that's a great, like, loop in which to get around that, like, well, why can't they just XYZ? I mean, yeah, it's really interesting. I always think about that when I watch Blade Runner. Okay. And they do the scene where they zoom in on the photo, and it's, like, the most archaic and difficult way to do it possible. But you're like, yeah, that's pretty, like, we'll do that soon. Like, exactly,
boring repeating motions.
Exactly, yeah.
Zoom, enhance, left, XY axis stuff, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the other thing that jumped out at me this time? It was that they really didn't quite know what to do with Inara.
Oh, it's
but the show never figured that out, right? Like, that's... The weaknesses of the show become a sort of a strength because you pay more attention to her, because she's the off-screen character for the first half. When she comes back, there's a reason for it. There's a purpose for her appearance, and then they keep saying, "Why are you here? Why are Simon and River back on the ship?" And it's that weird. I had this conversation on Twitter with somebody yesterday. It's the difference between narrative logic and emotional logic. Yeah. We need them together. Yeah. Because we love them. Yes. And that's. Like, ultimately, that is that's the final speech in the movie, that it's all about love. Yeah. But Whedon has always been so good about creating a selection of personalities that the audience wants to see together, even when the personalities don't want to be together.
That's such an interesting way of putting it. It's true.
You know, the Avengers is a squabbling family.
Yeah.
And Buffy, and, well, even Angel, except not towards the end, where everybody was a unified force.
But yeah.
But they're always about people who don't necessarily like each other, but they do love each other.
That's true. That's such a good way of putting that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. It's true. One of my favorite things about the film is that Mal and Inara don't get together at the end, as much as that broke my, like, tiny fangirl heart at the time. And in the comics, they totally get together, so it's fine.
Really?
Yeah. But I really like that at the end of the movie, because it's not necessary. Like, that's not what that story is about.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that they didn't really know what to do with her. I felt that way about her. I felt that way about Book, or Shepherd Book a little bit, because, I mean, obviously they just kind of, he's in it for like a moment and then kills them off, and that's ultimately, when you have a movie with this many main characters, like, what can you do? Not everyone can be useful all the time. I think this definitely falls prey to that a little bit. I do end up liking how they used most everybody, but, I mean, there's only so many moments of dialogue you can have in under 2 hours, you know?
And there's also the challenge of building an adversary that's actually movie worthy, you know, like, and I think they came up with a terrific solution. Whedon came up with there's no they, it's one guy.
I mean, yeah, realistically, yeah.
That by creating the operative, they give us an actor who is really watchable.
Yeah.
Like, just Chiwetel Ejiofor is so compelling and commanding just standing there.
Amazing.
And he is the negative image of Mal, in that they are both characters who cling to belief in a purpose, in a cause, without making it religion, and Book even calls him on it.
That's right.
Why do you always think I'm talking about God?
Yeah.
And yes, this is the dog snoring. We're both talking, so
We're
it has to be the dog. He's fallen asleep.
And that's what I think makes the scariest villain, like Shepard kind of says in the movie, is that someone who believes hard and, like, doesn't ask questions about why, who is just so single-minded and focused and believes that what they're doing is the right thing. That's the scariest type of bad guy. And, like, even though he's not particularly menacing, he's not, like, a terrifying alien, he's not a Reaver, which is, again, like you say, kind of the opposite of the operative, like, just pure feeling and rage. He's much scarier than they are, I think, because like, people are like that. Like, people now are like that. That's scary. Like, it's terrifying. Yeah.
Well, even his introductory scene, and then the first big scene with Mal in the temple, which is simply, you're not going to make me lose my temper.
Yeah.
He thinks he's being reasonable, which is the most terrifying thing.
Yeah. Every time I watch that scene, I want to be like, shoot for the head. I think I scream that at the television every single time I watch it. I'm like, Mal, what are you doing? You know better. So frustrating. So frustrating.
Yeah. But that's Mal, right? Like, that's, and this is the moment where I get to say how much I just love Nathan Fillion in this.
Yeah.
He's simultaneously, everybody sort of knocked Firefly at the beginning, just that first, I remember the first photographs that came out of him in the Browncoat costume. Yeah. It's like, oh, he wants to be Han Solo. It's like, no. Han Solo was a talker.
Yeah.
And Mal is kind of a magnificent hero because he's a bullheaded idiot who also happens to be very, very good in a fight.
That's true.
And just the mistakes he makes are, and goes back to the emotional logic thing, of course you'd shoot him in the chest. That's a cool thing to do.
Yeah, it looks cool.
It's just not the smart move.
No, it's true. I think one of my favorite things about Mal that they really, like, highlight in the movie, too, is that even though he is, like, kind of an idiot and never really knows what he's doing and is only, like, doing what is right for him and the people that he considers his family, like, at any given moment, and, like, doesn't really know what's 2 days ahead and can't really consider what's 2 days behind him. He's also, like, intelligent. Like, very intelligent. Like, when Hinara makes fun of him for having read a poem, in the, you know what I mean, about the albatross and everything. And, like, he does know what he's talking about, and he's smart in business deals, and he's smart at people, and he knows what he's doing. He's just, like, not very good at it, and like, that's super relatable. I think everybody kind of feels that way a little bit, like, you're just trying to get by for right now, and maybe it's a little metaphorical as opposed to, like, literally for them, but I think that's really, he was born to play that character. I think, like, it just, like, seeps out of his pores. I don't know. Well, it's no disrespect to Fillion for what he's done since. Richard Castle is not the most challenging role. Yeah, for sure. And Mal has colors and shades and stuff, and there are things that play in his face for a fraction of a second. Even
even in the TV series, but when you
Yeah.
see it on a big screen, you're just like, this is a movie star performance. What went wrong?
I totally agree.
And not what went wrong with Fillion, but what went wrong with the world that they missed him.
I know. I totally agree with you. I like, part of me thinks it's because, like, this is who he was supposed to be. Like, you know when an actor has, like, that role and, like, that's who they were supposed to be, and, like, that happens sometimes, and, like, I'm kind of okay with it. I like Castle, it's fine, but, like, Nathan Fillion will always be Mal for me, and, like, I don't know. That's, if you can't escape that, I guess that's a pretty okay thing to not be able to kind of get past.
It's a good legacy to have, absolutely.
Yeah.
But just to think for 1 year, less than 1 year, he was doing the thing he was born to do.
I know, tragic, isn't it?
Yeah, you want him to do, well, maybe, he's young, there's time.
That's true, yeah, that's definitely true. I think a lot of the actors from this movie sort of struggled to find a future after
there's that sci-fi, and I mean the channel curse. Where you never, like you do that one thing and then you never get out.
That realm like forever, like the Jewel States.
Yeah.
Who's like just cast in Legends of Tomorrow, I think.
She's in that.
Yeah, but she also did like Stargate and that kind of like that stuff.
Yeah.
So
and Legends of Tomorrow stars Arthur Darvill, who of course
Doctor Who
was basically unknown and is now only doing.
And Karen Gillan, who did Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, that's true, actually. It's very hard to escape that whirlpool. I think, like, Matt Smith is trying, but...
He's playing Prince Philip now.
That's interesting.
The young Prince Philip opposite Claire Foy in a 10-part Netflix series.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
And Jenna Coleman is playing Queen Victoria, I think, as well. So there you go.
That's it.
I guess you can play royalty. That's fair.
I mean, I've always wondered if it's, like, is it part of the culture chasing these people because having seen a legitimate performance in a sci-fi show, you want that again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh, I think that's definitely part of it. And, part of this whole social media convention world where you, like, become very, like, people are so connected. Like, I am so connected to this movie and to these actors and, will follow their careers anywhere, no matter how ridiculous or, not good the things they do. Like, I'll follow them anywhere. So I think there's like a real passion in that, and it really, you feel connected to these people, like you care about them, which is an odd thing.
It is. Well, I mean, is it though? I mean, it's the whole concept of television is that these people are in your home and you love them and befriend them.
Yeah.
So you feel like there's a relationship.
Exactly.
And that actually speaks to the existence of Serenity because it was generated by sheer love and worship, like 10 years before the Veronica Mars movie.
That's right.
This was the thing that could happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. You were in grade 12, so what was your awareness of it? How did it, like, you knew it was coming because we had the internet and people were talking about it.
Yeah, well, I had watched, like I say, I had watched all of Firefly live when it aired on Fox because I had been a Buffy fan and an Angel fan and had grown up in, like, a sci-fi household, so we followed all of that stuff. So when the show ended, I, like, obsessively followed, like, all the message boards and all the, like, campaigns to get it to happen and the news sites, and because the internet, like, there were fan sites at that time, like, not as...
Oh, no. No one has any idea how crude it was. People growing up now...
Yeah.
It's like...
It was messy.
Yeah. It's like we were the Gutenberg Bible people.
Yeah, for real. Like, very grassroots. Yeah, totally. So it was like that.
You had to have ASCII pictures.
Oh,
you had to type a face.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember... when, like, there was a lot of excitement when the movie sold, and then there was, like, a website that had gone up where they posted, and this was the first time, like, anybody, like, saying it now, it seems so, like, oh, they put up videos before the movie came out, which is, like, everybody does that, but they did, like, a web series, which was the first, like, there were no web series, like, there was no The Guild at this point, like, there was none of that, so, like, it was really groundbreaking that before the movie came out, they posted this series. They're on the extras and the disc now.
It's the set visit stuff, right? Like just the walking around.
No, it was like they were scripted. It was like River being questioned.
Oh, those, right.
By like the Hands of Blue men, and it was just her in like a very scary room, and they were only like 30 seconds, and one would go up every week, and you would be like, what is she going to say this time? And that was huge it's 2005, right?
I think
like,
so, yeah.
That was huge for 2005. Like, you would go online, you would see a video before the movie, and, like, there was all this, like, hype, and so people were just so stoked about it, and then, like, yeah, I had it in my day planner, and I wore my little, like, Chinese collar shirt and, like, a peasant skirt the day it came out, because I was like, I'm dressing up.
You were cosplaying.
I am, yeah, early cosplay, so,
Well, it's just, it's the kind of thing where you you want to, like, I actually, we were talking about Uniqlo Star Wars gear, and I have this fantastic t-shirt of a graffitied R2-D2.
That's amazing.
I found it in LA last year, and it's already gone. I mean, I still have it. And I was debating, like, do I wear it under a sweater to the Star Wars screening? No, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy who wears the shirt of the band to the band's show.
Oh my god, I totally did. Whatever.
But then with this, you kind of, because, like, Star Wars doesn't need my help.
Yeah, that's true.
Serenity was the kind of thing where...
You want to be a walking billboard all the time to be like, go see this movie, it's so good, please watch this show. And, like, that's been the cool thing. Like, I'm for sure one of those obnoxious nerds who is like, I watched it when it first aired. I saw it on opening day in the theater. Like, I'm for sure one of those. Right. But, like, the cool thing about this is that now it has, like, exploded in popularity in the decade since. I mean, it's tragic that all these people were not around to see it in the theater when it first came out, because then maybe we would have had 8 more. But, like, it is really cool that this is the kind of movie that has developed such an intense cult following, and now, like, I can share my love of it with a billion other people. And, like, you know, I think that's it's good, if a little bittersweet, perhaps.
It is kind of weird watching the world catch up to it.
Yeah.
I mean, in that now that people can sort of... somebody referred to, it was Whedon's love of killing beloved characters.
Yeah.
And how someone has to die and everything, and Wash was the example that was thrown out. And it's just like, but there was purpose there. Like, that wasn't, and people are sort of, it's as though it's become a cliche. I think it was in reference to the death in Ultron.
Right, of course.
The end of Ultron, which is expected. Yeah. Even though it isn't, like, he even he hangs the lantern on and has the character say, you didn't see that coming. It's
That's
like,
right.
Yeah, good point. But, It's as though people don't fully understand what the trope is, which in Whedon land, it's if you see someone happy, you know, brace yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
But it also sets up an actual, like, the ship is destroyed, and there's exactly, and it's not the end of the movie. There's still more to come.
Well, in that moment, like, I remember sitting in the theater, and that was the moment where, like, you think everyone is going to survive because it's a movie and your heroes survive. Yeah. And that was the moment when, like, we all knew that this was going to be the only movie. Like, there was going to be no more Firefly after this. Like, we all knew. Right. And so when he died, I remember sitting there in the theater so devastated, being like, they're all going to die now. Like, this is what's going to happen because there's no more show, and, like, there aren't going to be any more movies. So, like, he's just going to kill everyone. And you don't have that feeling until a character dies, because if someone hadn't died, there would have been no stakes for the rest of the film. And, like, this being a decade old now, like, it wasn't expected. I was super shocked when it happened. But it's true, like, if that had not happened, the rest of the film becomes like, oh, well, everybody lives.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, Book has already been killed, but that's, he's introduced as a recurring character in a way, so it makes it okay. Exactly. And it almost feels like a fake out that, you know, I gave you a death.
He's dead. Yeah, exactly. It already happened. Like, that's on the soundtrack track listing, which I remember being very irate about. Like, one of the songs is called, like, The Death of Shepherd Book. And I was, like, looking at the soundtrack before I went to see the film, and I was like... I had to keep it together because I was like, why would you do that? But yeah, and I was sure that was like the Whedon death, but no, sure enough.
Yeah, but it gives stakes. It absolutely gives stakes to The Last Stand, but it also gives us I mean, I was really impressed this time around realizing, oh, that's right, because now Zoe could also be set up to, so, like, it just feels like it's giving her a reason to sacrifice herself.
Totally.
And that plays emotionally as well as, and I remember someone complaining that she didn't seem upset at the time.
Her reaction is like, perfect.
Yeah, she's a soldier. That's exactly what
she's like a little bit in shock, and she's super checked out, and she just throws herself into the fight immediately, and like, I think it's super realistic. I don't think she would have like broken down.
Well, not the character as defined to us.
Yeah, exactly.
And Gina Torres doesn't get enough credit for the comic work she does in the show, but
she's amazing.
Dramatically,
yeah. I feel like casting is everything, I think, in all things, but the casting in this show was truly like lightning in a bottle, I think, for considering they were a whole bunch of unknowns, which I wish people did more. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I think casting movies with established actors has, like, I understand why people do it, because you need to bring in money, but, like, man, there's something about, I mean, you look at The Force Awakens, which is essentially 3 unknowns. Like, I was a big fan of Attack the Block, but that was
Yeah, that was us.
That's pretty much it. Like, yeah, exactly. And, like, look at how good... Like, that's what you need sometimes. You need, like, a fresh face on which to, imprint these very unique characters. Yeah. And maybe that's part of the reason we can't shake
Fillion.
Yeah,
but especially in terms of, a type. Because Nathan Fillion, at least at the time, looked like an action guy.
Yeah.
To the point where he has a walk-on role in Saving Private Ryan because he looked like a soldier.
That's right.
Although he was doing comedy at the time. He was doing Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place, and he was great on that.
Yeah.
To see him in this, it's just like, the first I guess the first episode I saw would have been The Train Job because they screwed that up.
Of course.
But you still get the sense that, okay, you can do both. You can be action guy and you can do comic because that's essential to Whedon.
Definitely.
And then more heart. Like, it just fills it in. It just seeps in.
Yeah.
So that by the time we get to the movie, we know what the stakes are. Just I cannot imagine what it would be like to not know who Malin and Nara are and watch them have that awkward conversation where
I know.
They're sort of speaking in code and they're also being completely ordinary idiots who can't profess their relationships status to each other.
That's right. That's so true.
But we bring a year of history. We bring all of it to them. It's
kind of how I feel about people who come... Like, everybody knows Wash dies. Sure, like, it's the biggest cliche in nerddom. So it would be so different now going to the show and expecting that the whole time. Like, that would be such a different experience. It's like how I feel about future generations of kids who will read Harry Potter, like, knowing that Harry Potter lives. Right. Like, that's a very different experience than people who, like, had to wait for every book and, like, didn't know what was going to happen. And there was all, like, that comes with so much baggage for someone like me. That was, like, such a part of my, like, development and all that stuff. So I think it's really interesting to talk to people and their different perspectives on this movie depending on when they watched it.
Right.
People bring different things to it, I think.
Well, just, to stay within sci-fi again, what George Lucas did to The Empire Strikes Back in the reversions and the revisions, slipping in. Have you seen the most recent version, the one on Blu-ray? Because it's...
I don't think so.
It's the one where he has actually... Well, it was a slow process, but over the years... Is this where
Han, like, definitely doesn't shoot first?
Oh, no, we're not even...
No, okay.
No, Lucas's insistence that the original Star Wars films are also about Anakin Skywalker, which is just total bullshit.
Total bullshit.
Extends to the point where in The Empire Strikes Back, in the latest edition of the revisions, he has replaced the Emperor with Ian McDiarmid.
Right.
And in that conversation with Vader, they're openly saying, well, your son is around. And they're talking about Luke as though he's Darth Vader's son, which hasn't been revealed yet in the film. But he is going on the presumption that, everybody knows, and this is what I wanted it to be all along, so now I fixed it. It's like, if this is what you wanted it to be, it's dialogue. You would have done it in 1980.
100%.
It's just this insanity, and I can't conceive of someone... I mean, I can't conceive of anyone making it to episode 4 if they start with episode 1.
Yeah.
But I can't conceive of someone experiencing this for the first time and watching it with active spoilers in the film, spoiling the huge reveal at the end of Empire.
Brutal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old enough that I was 11 when Empire played and first opened, and I went and saw it on opening day at the dearly departed university with like 1,000 people, and there was gasping and there was
I can't
crying.
imagine.
Yeah, it was a genuine shock, and to diffuse that from your own film just makes no sense to me. I mean, the spoilers for Serenity are plot-based. There's no betrayals, there's no reveals. I mean, I guess if you told someone that the Reavers were created by the Alliance, you're not really surprising them.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. It's not going to, like, spoil your intrinsic enjoyment of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
It feels like, it weirdly feels like the end of Dollhouse and the end of Angel season 1, really, where, hell was Earth and it's
thematic.
All us. Yeah. It's where Whedon goes. And even... both Avengers movies are ultimately about being prepared for a threat from within, even if it isn't happening.
That's right. I also want to say, too, I really love Sarah Paulson in this movie, even though she's in it, just for a minute. She's super good in it.
She and Ejiofor from reunited in 12 Years a Slave. They actually have scenes together in that one.
That's right. Yeah. I'm so glad Chiwetel is becoming super famous now, because I want to watch him in everything. I want him to be James Bond.
He could do it.
Yeah.
He's got scars. That makes him interesting.
Right? I could see it. I mean, Idris Elba, but still. Like,
people talk about Elba, and while I love him, he'll be too old by the time they get around to it. That's the problem. I know exactly what you mean. He'd be 50 by the time they make one.
Yeah.
And then you get into, not that it would happen with Elba, but you get into that scary Roger Moore territory where it's really obvious when the stuntman's there, and after a while, 65-year-old James Bond is kind of creepy.
Well, and even with this movie I found with Léa Seydoux, I was like, ooh, this is a little too May December for me. Like, I don't know. So, yeah. But again, I would go with an unknown. I think that would be really
carries
cool.
so much maturity now.
He's so great.
And what was it? Casino Royale was like 2006 or 7?
Yeah.
It was barely there.
So great.
Yeah. There's and he's in Force.
That's right, Force Awakens.
He is playing a stormtrooper in the Force Awakens, and
God,
it's
that's
delightful.
Great, so great.
Yeah, I saw it the second time knowing it was him, and it's just like I kind of caught it.
Yeah, you can. He walks the same.
Yeah,
you can tell.
It's walking away at the end.
Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
And I'm dropping my weapon.
So funny.
Yeah, and that playfulness wasn't there. Well, like because Serenity opened the same year as Revenge of the Sith, which is the saddest of the giant science fiction movies because it is the film of that trilogy with potential.
Yeah, absolutely.
And still doesn't realize it.
Agreed.
But this comes along and it's just like, oh, this is fun, this is joyful. I mean, this is closer to Serenity is closer to The Force Awakens than any of the 3 Lucas Star Wars movies.
For sure. I mean, I think you're right to say that the humor is key in both of those films because I think, like, sci-fi that takes itself very seriously totally has its place. Sure. Like, there's room for Serenity and there's room for 2001. Like, they're 2 very different things, but, like, for me, what I need in my TV and in my sci-fi movies, like, I need humor. I can't really get behind stuff that takes itself too seriously because, like, you know what? At the end of the day, we're talking about, like, spaceships and, like, super monster men. Like, you know what I mean? And, like, life is kind of funny. Like, that's so much more real to me than this, like, super serious science fiction. Because, like, that's not how people are. It's just, it's not how people are. And it's not how people would be in the future either. And so, like, that's why I think you can relate to these characters so much. Because you're like, that's maybe how I think I would be if I was perhaps on a spaceship of ragtag criminals. Like, wishful thinking, but, you know.
Oh, it could still happen. Who knows? Like, The Martian makes it seem possible, and that's only 20 years away.
Don't get my hopes up, Norm.
Yeah, but The Martian is how you make a science fiction movie now, I think, where you have to acknowledge how gallows humor and
exactly
and desperation and wisecracks would be the thing that gets you through.
That's why I personally thought The Martian was far superior to Interstellar. People may argue with me about that, but that's what I thought.
Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson will probably have something to say about it.
What a bummer.
I know. I don't get that.
I know. Just relax, buddy. Like, it's fine.
There's like a rolling droid. It doesn't matter if there's sand. He's probably hovering.
He's fine. He's fine.
He's BB-8. He's adorable.
Doesn't matter.
The Interstellar Martian debate is a really interesting one because in both cases you can see the merits, and I get what Nolan started to do.
Totally.
And I've interviewed him a few times, and I love him. He's smart, he's funny, he's interesting, and he kind of misses the point.
I completely agree with you.
Of what he wants to do, right?
I think Nolan is the kind of person, much like, I know we're kind of like going totally off base here, but I think Christopher Nolan is kind of like Stephen Moffat in that they thrive when they have someone to, like, rein them in a little bit. Sure. Or to be like, hey, I don't really know, like, this was great, and then we kind of went... And I'm not really sure.
It's the George Lucas, Gary Kurtz thing, right?
Well, exactly.
These people have to have fun.
You need someone to be like, oh, maybe just, like, let's pull it back and put it, like, more... But you need a little bit of that. And I think that, but that kind of suffers from that. But Serenity, on the other hand, is perfect, so...
Sure. Well, it is kind of... I do wonder how, how the guys making $175 million space movies feel when they just look at the little tiny ones that are, or even now there's other stuff, films like It Follows or what's the other one I was thinking of just a minute ago? Films that utilize film and cinema and narrative to do it cheaply and effectively. I mean, even Upstream Color. Primer's a fantastic example of a science fiction film made for no money, but it's also not particularly funny.
Yeah, but I know exactly what you mean.
But the idea of a gigantic production that tells you how important it is at every moment, and again, it's that harpsichord thing that Nolan does with the Bram noise that is turned into a big piano note.
Yeah.
But just you you're really going to tell me this was about love? This isn't about love. This is about going into space in giant machines. That's where you are. That's
I totally
what you
agree
want to
with you.
do.
And I think it is possible. That being said, I think a film that did that very well, that was a huge movie, but still made me believe that it was about love and family, was Guardians of the Galaxy.
Sure.
Like, that's one of the ones recently where, like, I cried in the first 5 minutes, and I was crying again at the end, and I was like, why am I crying in this funny Marvel movie? Like, what's happening? Like, it is possible, but it's super difficult, I think, to do. But you know, you're forced to do it with $5 million and, like, a screwdriver, like, whatever they made this movie with, because what else are you going to rely on, you know? It has to have a good script, it has to have heart, it has to have good characters, or else why are people going to come to see it? They're not. Yeah. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
And they did see it. I mean, people did turn out. Maybe not in droves. It wasn't a huge hit, but it did reasonably well, and it has never gone away.
Exactly.
You know, iteration after iteration, DVD box set and Blu-ray, and it was an HD DVD. God rest its soul. Yes. And there will be like a solid core 4K, and the effects have held up pretty well, I thought. I mean, we watched them last night, and there's a little shimmer in one or two shots. And what kind of amazed me was the fight choreography gets more precise over the course of the film. The first chase is fairly frenzied. The mule chase is very clearly shooting around effects that either couldn't be done or were too expensive.
That's one of those things that Joss has gone on to say in interviews, that if he could redo anything from that movie, it would be the mule chase, because like there wasn't the money or the technology to do what he actually wanted to do with it at the time. So it like doesn't really look at all like what he would have wanted it to be. And you can tell, like you can clearly tell with them like shaking around. I love that shot, though. It's so good. It's so effective.
That's the Star Trek shot.
It is. It totally is.
In a weird way, when at the time I thought, oh, that's adorable. He's
a good
acknowledging
homage.
like it's television on screen.
Totally.
This is how it would work.
That's good. I'll think of it that way.
But that's me making an excuse.
That's a good interpretation, though. I dig that. Yeah. I think overall
But the final battle is really gorgeously choreographed in the sense of proximity in space and everything else.
Yeah.
As opposed to the first that first sort of dogfight, I guess, when they're escaping. Yeah. In the shuttle, it just sort of ends very quickly.
Yeah, and the human-on-human fight choreography, I thought in this movie was great too, because it was never like nobody had superpowers. Like like you say, people get like really hurt, and like that last fight between Mal and the operative is like kind of bad. Like they're both just like swinging at each other, like Mal more than the operative or whatever. But he's fighting with like literally a screwdriver, and like that neither of them really know what they're doing overly much, and they're in this tiny space. And I really, in the same way that I appreciate the reality when it comes to the space garbage, like I appreciate that too, because like that's what it would look like if like a really good fighter and a desperate fighter were like against each other in the end.
And longish takes, like it's not choppy, it's very clear what's happening and who's throwing what punch and where.
That's right. And the one scene where Nathan Fillion like smacks his head on the floor and it looks really realistic is 100% real. He and had a huge swollen face for the rest of the day of shooting, and all of the other shots were the opposite side of his face. So they could never take advantage of the fact that their actor, legitimately took one and had this, huge face. And they were like, we can't show it. So frustrating. But, yeah, they, blood, sweat, and tears for sure on this one, I think.
I did get to talk to Whedon when he came to TIFF with Much Ado.
I was totally there.
You were at the screening?
Yeah.
Which one did you see?
Good.
The first one?
It was the 2:00 one, yeah.
Okay, so he had just come from that.
Yeah.
The whole cast went to that. And he was telling me, and Fillion was here too, apparently, right?
Yeah.
He didn't do the press day, I didn't get to see him. But he was telling me that everybody flew themselves out themselves because there was no distribution. And although he had Avengers money, they were like, no, don't bother, I'm coming. Everybody said to him, everyone you saw flew themselves in.
That's so cool.
And out again the next day because they were all working.
Sure.
But it was he was surprised by that. You could sort of feel it wasn't a bit. He was just sort of it's this little tiny movie we all made together so I could blow off some steam.
Yeah.
And you get the reunion of several wonderful Whedon actors.
Buffy faves, totally.
Yeah. And you get Fillion being comic in that perfect way.
So funny, yeah.
And it's somehow, again, it's a movie about a family in a room, in a house, yelling at each other.
Yep. Yep.
And if that's
So true.
if that's the only thing he does, he's so good at it that I don't mind, and I don't want him to stop.
No, I agree. And it manages to be just different enough every time that I'm okay with it, and with enough of a different twist. And that's why, as much as I loved what he did with the Avengers, and tragically not Ultron so much, because I think a lot of that was taken out of his hands, and maybe that's just me making excuses, but...
No, I think that's pretty much... I mean, you can feel a lot of boxes being ticked. And that's sort of a thing that I'm feeling now with the Marvel movies in general.
I totally agree with you. I started feeling that way when Edgar Wright got taken off of Ant-Man, which ended up just being so tragic, and yeah, they're getting more and more generic, and... Anyways, it's a shame because they were like the one thing they were so good at was assigning directors to films. Like that's where they excelled so, and that's why the films were so good. And it breaks my nerdy heart.
I'm holding out hope for Guardians 2 just because Gunn is so weird.
Me too.
And it's the one that can, it can have the least pieces of Marvel stuff.
The thing that worries me about Guardians 2 is that Nicole Perchevsky co-wrote the first script, and then he did not invite her back for the second one. Like,
did they write the first draft? Did they write the first one together? Or
she wrote it,
separate? Yeah,
and then he got hired and kind of like tweaked it. But like the Writers Guild decided that enough of her was still in there that like she got a credit on it. So like obviously, so I am admittedly like a little bit concerned that maybe we'll be missing some of the heart potentially. But James Gunn is so great that I'm trying to...
Have you seen the specials? All his movies have weird heart.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I mean, he's almost like sort of...
Speaking of Nathan Fillion, like Slither. Yeah, totally.
Oh, Slither.
I know.
I wanted to like that so much more.
I know.
I like it, but I can't enjoy it as much.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. It just doesn't quite land.
I agree.
And I loved everything that it's doing, and Night of the Creeps is a big fan favorite thing for me. And almost, but not quite.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you.
Yeah, and I don't know who's like. I don't think it's anyone's fault. I think it just doesn't quite
get there.
It's not Fillion's fault. It's not Banks's. Like everybody in it is somebody I like, and it just goes sideways.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. Yeah, I don't really remember how we got onto this topic, but Joss. Yeah, I think that
and everything, families.
Yeah, he does it Marvel. In a different way every single time, and hopefully, whatever he does next will be the same, because there's nothing I love more than a Whedon ensemble.
Yeah. He is one of those guys who hasn't become a cliche unto himself. He's become a trope, but it's a trope that only he can play, so it kind of works, right?
I totally agree. I mean, I think there might be... After Ultron, I think a lot of people expressed a little bit of Whedon fatigue. But
the Whedon stuff isn't the stuff that's bad.
Well, that's Ultron. What kind of got me about that, and that's... I had a big problem with that. Like, I wrote a review of it and, like, actually quite liked it for what it was. But, like, I think that people blamed him for everything that was wrong with it. But I think the unfortunate thing is that, like, all the things that were wrong with it, I don't know the dude at all, but, like, he knows. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, he's a smart dude, and he made all of this great stuff, and, like, he 100% knows what was wrong with it, and this, like, probably wasn't the movie that he wanted to make. So I'm always frustrated when people are like, oh, this was a... Joss Whedon, like, doesn't have any skills anymore, and he, like, just does the same thing over and over again. It's bad, and it's like, oh, but it could have been so good.
Yeah, like, I mean, look at the party scene and the attack and the way that the party scene sets up the best joke in, I think, the entire Marvel universe, which is the Vision picking up the hammer.
Beautiful.
And it sits for an hour and a half before it pays off.
Beautiful.
That's Whedon. Like, that's
100%.
That's what I want. That's
100%.
The guy I love.
Yeah.
And Serenity is maybe not the purest distillation of him, but it's the film where, like, he feels like he's proving himself, and
I totally agree.
There's so much love in it. There's so much passion in the frame, even when it's just the fifth shock shot of a Reaver jumping into frame. It still has there's so much energy in there.
Yeah, it's like frenetic. Almost the whole movie has like this energy to it. But you're right. Like the love of the film from everyone who made it, like from the director to all of the actors to like just everything is so palpable in this movie, and I think that's part of why I like it so much. Yeah, it's true.
So the wrap question is always the same too, which is like, what of it have you taken and used as your own, or is there anything, do you ever, other than running around in browncoat gear, which I'm sure has happened at least once, is there something of Serenity or Firefly that you keep with you?
That's a really interesting question. I think that there are two different answers to it. I think it's like my ultimate comfort film. Like whenever I'm having a bad day, I put it in, I watch it. Like it's one of those things for me that it always makes me feel better and comforted because it does have such a good message at the end about love and everything. But the other thing is that it just makes me really want to make things.
Okay.
Like, that's the thing about Firefly and Serenity is, like, such a good world that inspired so many people. Like, doesn't it make you want to create your own stuff? Like, it makes me want to write books. It makes me want to, like, do something. That's how I feel about... Maybe that's odd, but... Yeah, that's how it makes me feel.
I don't think so. I don't think it's odd at all. I mean, the impulse to run around in the world, and if you can't do that, make your own.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it.
All right. Yeah. So, for people who have never seen it and are still listening...
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, but you'll still love it. I promise.
And would you suggest that they see Firefly first? Should they start with the series?
Well, I always suggest that because I am a purist. Sure. And frankly, you know, heartbreakingly, there are not that many episodes of Firefly, so we're not talking about, like, an 11-season supernatural commitment. Like, it's like, what, 16 episodes or something?
Well, yeah, 16 if you count the pilot as
You can knock it out in a week, you know? So, I mean, I totally would.
Christina Hendricks, and you get to see, like,
Christina Hendricks, Oh, so many good people got their start.
And the guy I can never remember the name of, who's in Battlestar Galactica, plays Badger, and
Mark Sheppard.
Mark, I knew it was...
Who is in literally every sci-fi thing ever.
And again, it's because, this guy can make it relatable and human.
Totally.
Even in a space hat.
With his, like, Cockney accent. Like, in a space hat, exactly. I would totally advise starting with Firefly, but I also think that if you're a little daunted by that commitment, you can watch the movie and still get good things about it. And then when you're done the movie, you'll want to go watch the show anyway. So either way, you're going to want to watch the show.
It's true. The first 5 minutes of Serenity fills in the set, gives you the reason to go back and figure out what else happened between that and the next 110 minutes.
Totally. Yeah. And then afterwards, go and read all the comic books.
That's right. They're good.
Yeah, they are good, actually. Yeah, I think that they've all been written really well, so.
Yeah, I think I've only read Better Days, but that was a good one. That was a good one. 3-issue series.
Yeah, and then there's, like, the Wash one-shot, which was by Patton Oswalt, which was really good, and has the reveal at the end, a reveal about Zoe at the end.
Oh, wait, I have read that because I remember that.
Yeah, that's good.
The reveal.
And then there was the Shepherd book series, which, like, went into his past and stuff, because that is a big mystery on the show, and that finally reveals what that is, so...
I don't know that I need to know that.
I know exactly what you mean.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't need to know. It's like the Star Wars prequels. I don't
totally
need
agree.
to know that Anakin Skywalker had a bad childhood. I kind of got that.
No, I'm good. Yeah, we're good. Yeah. I'm with you. I think that if you're, like, really invested, it's a good thing to do, but you can not and be fully satisfied, I think, as well. So yeah.
Is there anything that somebody who really likes Serenity would maybe not know about and that is worth discovering? Is there... I thought about Cowboy Bebop as a possible alternative.
Oh, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, totally. I mean, Cowboy Bebop is an anime, and anime is, like, the one area of geekdom where I'm, like, woefully undereducated, but I've been trying to get into it, and, like, the very first thing I watched, next to Sailor Moon, of course, which I watched when I was, like, a child, but was Cowboy Bebop, and that came out, like, several years before Firefly. Yeah. But the influences are so obvious. Like, I don't want to come out and be like, Joss Whedon plagiarized this. But, like, a little bit Joss Whedon plagiarized this. Like, it's an anime about, you know, 4 ragtag crew members on a ship called the Bebop. And it's, like, it's a space western, is what it is, about bounty hunters in space. And really heavily dependent on music, jazz music, as opposed to, like, a Western style with Firefly, but the characters are so good. It's 24 half-hour episodes. It takes no time at all to get through, and it's just, like, one of, anime or not anime, it's one of the best written series, I think, of television of all time, so you should, if you're a Firefly fan, like, you will absolutely appreciate Cowboy Bebop, for sure.
I might be on side with that. I've only seen the movie, but...
Oh, yeah, the movie's
super good, too. So I have absolutely no
too.
Understanding of the backstory, so now I get to do that.
You should.
I get to Firefly my way in.
It was good. It was my first time sitting through an anime like that, and I find that the storytelling structure is very different than American television.
Yeah.
Like, with the main difference, I think, between the two shows is that Firefly starts, like, in media res or whatever. Like, the crew is already all together, and, like, over the course of the series, in, like, great episodes like Out of Gas or whatever, you kind of come to understand how they came to be and what their relationship is, whereas with Cowboy Bebop, it starts with one person, and then you gather another, and then the crew is all together by the end. Okay. So it's more of, like, a linear development that way, but... that's an interesting, different way to watch television too. So you can get different things out of it.
It's good to have a project.
Yeah,
I will
do it. Do it.
My thanks to Sam Maggs, who'll be at Fan Expo in Toronto from Friday through Sunday this weekend, moderating panels and doing signings and generally reminding people that her new book, Wonder Women, 25 Innovators, Inventors, and Trailblazers Who Changed History, is out October 18th from Quirk Books. You can find her full schedule at sammaggs.com, and you can find Sam on Twitter at sammaggs, all one word, 2 M's, 2 G's. Also, pick up a copy of her first book, The Fangirl's Guide to the Galaxy. If you are a fangirl yourself or just have one in your life, it's a really fun and genuinely illuminating reference tool for both nerd culture and life in general. You can find Serenity on DVD and Blu-ray from Universal Studios Home Entertainment and for sale and rental on iTunes and Google Play. You can find Firefly in all of those places as well, courtesy of 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment. And they're both streaming on Netflix because life is good. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com. You can also find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. If you want to leave a review on iTunes, that would be very kind of you. This week's call sign should be, You Can't Stop the Signal. And if you are Joss Whedon, hey, had a great time talking to you. Come on the show. And thanks for listening.